Hello, everyone. This is Tom Fox back for another episode. I'm absolutely thrilled today to have with me Nina Sunday. Nina is a podcaster. She is an author. She is a speaker. But we're going to talk about difficult conversations. But before we get there, Nina, I want to first thank you so much for taking the time to visit with me today.
Oh, it's a real pleasure, Tom, and I'm excited to be here.
Tell us about your podcast.
It's called Manage Self Lead Others. It's now in its sixth year. We're at episode 160 something, and it's on C-Suite TV and C-Suite Radio. And basically, I interview experts from around the world, and I'm based in Australia, so there's a goodly number of Australian experts, but from around the world, experts in leadership, teamwork, elevating team culture. And the interesting thing is, about 2 years ago, I was delivering a course on leadership and was giving my difficult conversations template. And after I'd sort of shown them how to do it and got them to do a role play, they said, "And what else you got?" I realized I didn't have much else because it had taken me a lifetime to get to that one template that I thought was it. So I've actually now got this whole exploration of a whole continuum of little nudge conversations to the difficult performance management. This is a warning conversation, and every episode, every conversation in between. That actually is the basis of the book that I've just done based on the podcast. And it's called Manage Self Lead Others, Constructive Conversations, Real Self-Leadership, and Culture You Can't Fake.
So we met in Dallas at the C-Suite Thought Leadership Council, and we're both members of that. We're both members of C-Suite Radio. One day I will be on C-Suite TV with you. I have a friend who says something along the lines of the following: there are no difficult conversations. There are only conversations about difficult topics. Is that a fair assessment, or how might you frame it?
That's exactly one of the first points I make, is that in the book and in the podcast episodes, I have called them difficult conversations because according to SEO, that's what people search for. And it's sort of ingrained in people to call them difficult conversations. But it goes back to my experience delivering customer service training, is that we reframe difficult people to difficult behavior. People aren't necessarily difficult. It's just that occasionally their behavior becomes difficult. So I put two and two together and went, let's not call it difficult conversations anymore. Let's call it constructive conversations, because everyone loves constructive feedback.
So what could you tell our audience about your professional background, which led you to sort of these aha moments and what you're doing today?
I go back in training a long way. I mean, my first job was a teacher teaching English, but I quickly went to film school, exchanged the chalk to a camera and spreadsheets, and I learned how to become a production manager, worked in television. But through the years of being a student, I was delivering speed reading for an international company here in Australia. And so I became used to teaching adults how to speed read. And then I got a little bit disillusioned with my career path in the television studio and decided that maybe my first love really was training, because I did love that aha moments when people could end up reading at 1,000 or 2,000 words per minute. And I still do deliver that topic. But when I was doing this I wrote out the perfect career for myself, and it ended up that it was describing self-employment. So I followed that path. And then I had spent 2 years creating my own newer, better speed reading program and started my business. First 10 years was accelerated reading and learning, teaching speed reading. However, a business manager, a management consultant did a business report for me and said, "You've got to branch out. You've got to develop new topics." So I just looked at my skill set: business writing, time management, customer service, and then I had to develop leadership skills as I put more people on the team. Initially, I hired facilitators that were already leadership facilitators, but in the conversations I had with my clients and developing the content and the workbooks, I became a leadership trainer as well.
You know, what you teach down to a granular level, even with practical opening lines managers can use to set a positive tone for a meeting. Many middle managers have been people who are very good at their jobs or duties, have been promoted, but they've been given no training on how to manage people. How do you counsel that middle manager who really doesn't know how to give a conversation about a difficult topic as opposed to perhaps receive one?
Tom, let me just confess, I was one of those middle managers that had no idea how to have a conversation. I was an avoidant manager. And what happened is I would lose the loyalty of good team members because I didn't understand, number one, the importance of one-on-one conversations. I always had group conversations. I had a team of mostly about 5. At a high point, we had about 8 or 10 people, as well as the external trainers around the country. But I came across a saying, which is the behavior you accept is the behavior you condone. And what I had been doing unintentionally was, and one example that I write about in my book is that I used to come out of my office and we had 6 workstations. And so frequently one person would be leaning over, interrupting and talking to the person in front of them, then snap back into their chair as soon as I walked out. And that was happening time and time again. Did I say anything? No. In my head, I went, oh, it seems so petty. Oh, how can I say you can't talk? I didn't say anything. But then came our summer break, and I read Eli Goldratt's The Choice, and he's an author who's now passed on, who I ultimately admire. He was saying that any disharmony affects profit. And of course, for me, profit and results was everything. See, I didn't understand what Peter Drucker I came across later, which was culture eats strategy for breakfast. And I was so focused on strategy and results, putting graphs of sales results around the wall, thinking that was great. And yes, we would have group team meetings. We would celebrate birthdays. We'd celebrate the national holidays, with, pre-Christmas drinks or lunch. We have the big horse race, Melbourne Cup. But that wasn't it. It's not socializing. That's not culture. Culture is actually being able to have real conversations. And it wasn't until the management consultant who did what's called a 360-degree assessment, he told me what people really think and weren't going to tell me. So that was a real wake-up call.
So, what can you tell people, or how do you train them on a what to say, even guide to address poor behavior constructively?
There's a number of things. I've actually done neurolinguistic programming and I should have known better. There are ways to actually open a sentence that will open up a discussion that is non-threatening. And even in reading some Harvard Business Review material on emotional intelligence, I know there's the famous books by Simon Sinek called Start With Why. But if you're curious to ask a question about why somebody did a particular behavior, don't start with why. Start with, I'm curious. What was the reason, ... Because I'll give you an example. I had a team leader who said, I was away for a week and other people were away absent as well. And my payroll officer allowed somebody else to go on a break. And I asked her, why did you let Mary go on a week's break? And she got all huffy and was offended and saying that you gave me the right to give people leave if they requested it. She said, no, I'm not questioning your judgment. I'm just curious as to the reason why. That should have been how she opened the question. I'm curious is a wonderful way to ask a question. I'm wondering if is another wonderful way. And I don't know if. I don't know I don't know why Mary went on a holiday, on a vacation. Can you tell me why? And so it kind of smooths the waters. It doesn't come on as being terribly interrogative. So that's one way. Shall I tell you another?
Sure.
Because that particular template that I thought was so great, but BFIR, behavior, feedback, impact, results. I was sharing that with one of my podcast guests whose episode I describe in the book. It's got Scott Dutton, and he's a trained mediator, so he's got far more skills than me. But I gave him that template, and he said, oh, Nina, say somebody is habitually late for meetings. I won't say that you're always late, because you never say never and you never say always. They'll always argue back, what about the time when? But he said, I just say something like, I don't know if you're aware, but when you came late to that meeting, we all felt compelled to give you a bit of a summary about where we were before we moved on. And we, in retrospect, we kind of feel that, or I kind of feel that we wasted time. And I don't know if you're aware of that. So he just did a, I don't know if you're aware of that, and left it. Whereas the other, and I said, my method sounds like a sledgehammer by comparison. It's like taking a breath and going whoosh. And then it's like you've just used a fire hose to just tell them everything. And there's no two way, it was all one way. So I find that different experts have different opinions about how to have that conversation that improves performance. And I've just presented the range in the book, and I said there's a continuum. There's no one size fits all. Sometimes it is performance management. You're giving them a warning, and that particular human resources person said, so you tell them it's a hard conversation. You prepare them for the fact that this is serious. But you wouldn't want to do that right at the start when you really just want to, like that woman that I wanted to say, look, I don't know if you're aware, but it seems to me that when you pop back in your chair the minute I come out of the room, you're feeling a little bit guilty about chatting to the other person next to you, and just open it up and see what they say.
So, why do you believe that you actually have a leader can have power in showing vulnerability, particularly in the area of feedback?
This is where my guests have educated me. I thought I was interviewing a guest, Mel Kettle, about giving feedback, and her whole first half was about receiving feedback and asking for it. And I'm sitting there going, oh, gee, you'd really have to trust the staff member, the team member that you're asking for feedback about, because there's been a few team members that I've had to see. This is it. I didn't name it, I didn't call it out. I remember we'd have one on ones. She was my top salesperson, but I got a tone of superiority from her. And she'd ask questions like, what's the gross profit margin of blah, blah? And I said, I haven't exactly got that figure available for you in a moment. And she would go, when I worked in that, we had to always know that. And it was such a tone of condescension. But did I say that? Why are you sounding so condescending? I'm the one that's employing you. I'm the one that's giving you the job. Perhaps you could be more kind to me. I mean, that's being vulnerable, but that's naming it. That's calling it out in a way that isn't, I hope, not accusatory. It's just saying, look, I'm getting the feeling that you are, sounds like you're feeling superior to me. And look, we're all here to learn. So I think it's just being honest with people. And it depends. See, I've looked at the work of Professor Gerald Williams in negotiation, and he describes two types of people essentially when they're negotiating. They're either cooperative or ineffective, cooperative people or aggressive people, and it depends where they are on the continuum, whether they are effective or ineffective. And I am definitely on the cooperative side, but if I'm dealing with an aggressive, I kind of do have to not be quite so vulnerable. I do have to protect myself. So it takes a bit of people reading to know where are they on that continuum and where am I, and how do I navigate that difference?
I touched on this point a little bit earlier, but how I struggle with the role of the middle manager and what tools a middle manager is given. In my world of legal and regulatory compliance, the middle manager is the first person an employee who has an issue, a problem, sees something, wants to speak up, is to go to their middle manager. But many middle managers don't feel like they have the tools to intake that information and then pass it up the channel appropriately. But that's just one example. You talk about when a manager realizes I've got to do more than manage, I have to create other managers. How can we give those people who've been the doers the skills to become the developers for their company, whether it's inputting a speak up and being a listen up, whether it's developing a bench of potential managers, whether it's creating a culture that really fosters innovation within a team? How do we begin to have that conversation?
You know, Tom, I go, whenever I'm working with a team, I frequently ask, what's the best book on leading people that you've read lately. And people can hardly name a book. And I say, what podcast have you been listening to? Half of them can't tell me. It's like, I believe that everybody who is leading people has their own duty to themselves to develop their own skills. But why isn't the organizational culture saying, let's create an opportunity for us to read books? Let's put some books on the shelf for people to take home and read, or give them a Kindle so they can read it online. And let's create an opportunity for people to talk about the books that they've read and the ideas in it. So there's every culture can be organizations can encourage self-learning, but also group learning, because I know some companies buy this vault of information and go, here, there's the login, now go teach yourself. And it's so lonely doing that. If everybody agrees that they're going to read a chapter of this book this week and then have 10 minutes discussing it, to drop everything and read and then maybe talk about it, wouldn't that bring up the conversation in the workforce? But some people say books are dead. I don't believe so. I get a lot of learning. I learned so much from Charles Handy's The Empty Raincoat. It was the answer to my question, why do some team members lose motivation after 2 or 3 years when they started so excited and so motivated in the beginning? He gave me the answer.
So let me turn to your podcast. Let me stick with that.
Yeah.
How do you use your podcast? There are multiple reasons to have a podcast and multiple uses for a podcast. You can be a thought leader. You can develop relationships. You can create content. You can develop an audience. How do you use your podcast within the context of your business? You've already told us one way, which is content creation, which led to a book, which I'm a huge fan of, Asking for a Friend. But how else do you use your podcast?
Thanks for that compliment about the book, because it's interesting. I did have saved on my folder your particular recommendations for how to write a book from your podcast. But as it turns out, I didn't actually follow that. I just decided that I was not going to use publish the transcripts. I was going to go in and explore every transcript, but describe it in my own terms, as if it was an article for my e-newsletter. And so it was fortunate that I was sheltering in place with Cyclone Alfred, that I actually had 4 days in a row to just get 7,000 words started. And once I had the 7,000 words, it was going. But the advice that Jeffrey Hazlett from C-Suite Network has said, invite people on your podcast who you think might employ you. So very frequently I'll get the human resources director of a big company like Hewlett Packard or Accor Hospitality and invite them on my podcast with a view to being able to say before or after camera, oh, by the way, I used to deliver business writing for Accor. Who do you think I should be contacting now? It's not my only criteria. And quite frankly, sometimes it creates that relationship and sometimes it does not. But I find now that it's boosted my credibility in that I can name a lot of global experts as a colleague, as a business friend. In fact, Mark Victor Hansen, who wrote the Chicken Soup for the Soul series, he calls me my friend. Nina Sunday has written this amazing book, and why don't you read it? So I do remember when I started the podcast, it was a month after COVID started and we were all in lockdown. I felt for that first year that it kept my brain sharp. And so that when we were going back into face-to-face in-person training, I didn't feel like I was rusty or out of practice. So it's sharpened my ability to ask insightful questions, just as you do, Tom. You're pretty skilled at it too.
I tell people that I'm not the smartest guy in the room, but I talk to the smartest people in the room. And because of that, and I talk to everybody, it's not that I can see around corners, but I can put dots together. And that's what I do because I'm talking to so many people. Nina, unfortunately, it looks like we're going to be near the end of this episode. But before we leave, I wanted to ask you one, what would be the best way for a listener to connect with you? Two, what would be the best way to discover your podcast and find out about your books? And then number three, if someone wanted to contact you, and I hope they do, about training middle managers or any or all of the skills we've talked about and perhaps some more, how would they do that?
Thanks for asking, Tom. LinkedIn is a very good way to find me, and so you can send me a direct message there. And I've got ninasunday.com is my speaker website, and brainpowertraining.com.au for Australia is my training website. And Manage Self-Lead Others is the podcast. It's on all the platforms. It's also on C-Suite Radio and C-Suite TV. It's also a channel on YouTube. And I'm hoping to grow my subscribers on YouTube, but most people find it, say, on Apple Podcasts or all the other iHeartRadio, all the other apps. And and so the book will be on Kindle by the time this goes to air, and the paperback will be soon following. So do look for the book, Manage Self-Lead Others, and you'll find out all about constructive conversations and how to appreciate your team, and a little bit about personal branding and how to influence people through intentional language.
Well, Nina, I wanted to thank you again for taking the time to visit with me, and I hope we can continue this conversation.
It was a delight, Tom, and thanks so much for inviting me on. It's a pleasure.
Compliance Podcast Network. Start your mornings with daily compliance news, quick, sharp updates on the top compliance and ethics stories in under 5 minutes every morning in Compliance Podcast Network. Because compliance never sleeps. Need practical advice fast? Check out Compliance Tip of the Day. One actionable idea to level up your program. Short and sweet, every day on Compliance Podcast Network. Got 10 minutes? We've got the week's top 10 stories. 10 for 10 brings you the big compliance headlines. Fast, fun, and focused. Every Saturday on Compliance Podcast Network. And don't miss the Sunday Book Review, where compliance meets culture through must-read books and big ideas every Sunday in Compliance Podcast Network. Whether you're in the office, on a walk, or commuting, stay smart, stay ethical, stay tuned. Only on the Compliance Podcast Network, available wherever you listen to podcasts.